Men, do you ever feel like you just can't get ahead? Like you're misunderstood? Like you have no one to talk to that truly hears you?
And women, are you often frustrated, hurt, and saddened in your relationships with the men in your life?
What if there were a community of like-minded men going through the same challenges that would support, hear, and understand what you're going through?
Working together in unison to create understanding, intimacy, and strong connections. That's the Way of the Illuminated Warrior.
Way of the Illuminated Warrior Talk Show is a forum of candid conversations for men and women.
Recently, I was listening to a podcast called Go and Find Out, and I was fondly remembered of the summer after I graduated college. I recall being restless and looking to expand my horizons, and I was filled with a wanderlust. So what did I do? I bought Let's Go Europe travel book, a backpack, and a URL pass. And a URL pass allowed me to travel through Europe anywhere I liked for a month. So I was off. Intentionally, I decided to travel by myself because I knew if I traveled with friends, it would be a lot harder to meet people. So my parents thought I was crazy. At that time, there were no cell phones, at least not for my young self anyway. So I reassured my parents. I was going to get picked up at the Heathrow Airport from my buddy, my Australian friend, John Papel, aka Stretch, and everything would be fine. So there's a lot of stories and a lot of adventures maybe for another time. But today's show is about the adventures of my new friend, Jonny Wright. And he is the founder and adventurer of that podcast I mentioned earlier, Go and Find Out. And Jonny left his home, he left his job, he left the United States to go and find himself, or as Jonny puts it, to go and lose himself. So I want to welcome you to the show, Jonny, and I'm very excited to talk to you about all this adventure stuff.
Well, thanks so much for having me on the show, Waska. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah.
Yeah, it's it really did flash me back to like when I was do you mind if I ask you, because I don't even know, how old are you now?
I'm 31.
Okay,
Yeah.
you're 31. So I was 22. I went for
Wow.
I gifted myself that for my 23rd birthday. But I just think about it. I listened to all 9 episodes. Currently, there are 9 episodes, right? And it's just besides for being a really talented, creative, and eloquent speaker. I mean, the production value of the show, I highly recommend everybody check it out. It's engaging, it's exciting, and it's just cool, man. It really is cool. I love it. So I just want to start off because I know what my impetus was to start traveling. Like what got you on the road, so to speak? And why
Yeah.
hitchhiking? Why not like, hey, I know a dude in anywhere in Europe and just go stay with them and figure it out from there?
Totally. Totally. Well, I can't wait to hear about your impetus to start traveling. But for me, it was a matter of being in the pandemic, right? And those years were very confined years. I'd gone through a big breakup just before the pandemic. And then I found myself, in a very new situation. I was teaching music. I was kind of living the artist's life where I was very dedicated to what I was making at the time, which was music. And in a way, it was really beautiful, and I got to dig into that. But at the same time, it was just so small. And I'd never been very interested in travel. Travel was, for me, like I equated that with luxury trips and these kind of vacations that felt really indulgent and it just wasn't my wheelhouse. I love to learn, and I love to make things. So travel didn't have anything to do with that for me at that point. And then I was just thinking, how can I get out of my comfort zone? How can I get out of this really tiny box that somehow I've landed in? I don't really know how I got here, but I'm here and I got to work with this. So I didn't have that much money to use. So I was working within these confines, and the confines were, well, okay, a very limited amount of money. But the one thing that I did have was potentially time, because I didn't have all that much dedication to my job of teaching music. So I was like, well, I'm not that dedicated to my job. I'm not that dedicated to being here in Asheville for the next period of time. So what can I do with those ingredients? A lot of time, a little bit of money, and a lack of responsibility, basically. And for me, the thing that came up was hitchhiking, because to me that was the furthest thing from what I wanted to do. That was the thing
Yeah.
that felt scary, that felt so far outside of anything I'd done up to that point. So hitchhiking felt like this polar opposite, right? And there's a kind of draw, I think, sometimes to that thing that is the thing you would never do.
Hmm. The challenge of it. Yeah.
The challenge, yes. And the kind of sense, we develop these senses of who we are, right? The sense of self. I would never do that. Oh, of course, I always do that, right? These nevers and always
In the
float
box,
around
right.
in
In
our
the box
brains.
thinking, right. Yeah.
Yes.
I love that.
And so sometimes I think it's really wonderful to take a never and make it a yes, make it a okay, that is me right now at this moment. And sometimes go the other way around, where I always do this thing. Oh, well, what would happen if you didn't, right?
Yeah.
So that was really intriguing to me at the time. And I started right in Asheville, where I was living. I
Hmm.
got my roommate to drop me off on the side of the road. I made a sign on a piece of cardboard, and I just stood there and held up my thumb. And it really didn't feel like any kind of a guarantee. It felt like I might be, you know, walking home that day, right? And
Well, so I got to ask you, had you ever hitchhiked before that? Because like
never.
I'm considerably older than you. Okay, hitchhiking is really not that popular a thing. Like when we were young, we didn't even think about it. I lived in New York on Long Island. We hitchhiked to the beach all the time. We didn't think about it being dangerous. It was just we didn't have cars. That's what we did. So that's got to be a whole new experience just out of your wheelhouse. Yeah, I'm gonna get out there and hitchhike. It's not as common as it used to be.
Right. It used to be, yeah, it's to me it seems like it used to be a kind of ingrained part of American culture, especially
Mhm.
for kids,
Yeah,
where yeah, to get to the beach or you go hiking and you got to get home then or whatever it is. You go to a friend's house, but then your parents can't pick you up or any of those situations. It seems like people used to be like, "Oh, well, I can always try, I can always stick out my
yeah,
thumb and catch a ride." But that is something that has changed quite a lot. That's, I think, especially in suburbia.
yeah.
The
Well,
That's not the
I got
vibe.
so many questions because I just love that you did this. What do your parents think? Because that's you started in Nashville, North Carolina, but you went around the globe. I mean, what were they thinking? My parents weren't happy. I mean, now we have cell phones, but even with that, we're going to get into some of the adventures that you got into. But what do your parents think?
My parents are very kind and supportive people, and so they were not uh, they were not necessarily happy when I
Mm.
first told them about my idea, but they were at least uh, not defensive about it, and so they were kind of like, "Oh, that's interesting. That sounds interesting." And then it took them some time, but they eventually became excited, and especially once I was out and they were hearing back from me that,
Mm.
oh, this is actually yielding a lot of meaningful experiences, and there's a lot of friendship there, and there's a lot of support, and there's a lot of kindness out there, then they got a lot more excited about it.
Yeah.
But it took some time for them to warm up to things.
Yeah, I'm
um,
sure.
yeah.
So I have to ask you. Okay, so most of my life has been in New York, and working in New York City. My youngest went to school in Lower Manhattan, Cooper Union. So we did a trial just because I was like, I know Manhattan. I mean, I know the dangers, I know the homelessness, I know all the, just especially with my kid going there. I'm like. I had some panic about it because, and of course, my kid didn't have any worries about it at all. We did a trial run getting down to Lower Manhattan. Anyway, you basically slept in an alley. You weren't trying to emulate, being homeless. You acknowledge that you're a privileged white young guy, but you had that experience. You actually went with nothing and you asked for nothing and you slept like on the ground, you got thrown out of the park. So share that experience because I think that's a pretty bold thing to do. That's like a real like nitty gritty getting down and dirty with it, you know. So share that experience, please.
Mm. It was a continuation of that sense of I am this, I am not that, right? These boundaries that we set up. I had already been challenging those boundaries as I was hitchhiking up the East Coast.
Hmm.
And by the time I made it to New York, I was about to fly to Europe and hitchhike there. And I was in a state of mind where I was willing to try things, right? And then while I was in New York, I met a guy who was from the country of Georgia, and he'd come to New York. He was an artist, but he'd also worked in finance and stuff. And he really was living a life so far outside of the bounds for me of what I ever could imagine my life to be. He was living outside, eating straight from the trash, and really doing very little. He would do a lot of writing and he would do a lot of thinking and meditating and walking, and he would talk to many people around, but his life wasn't productive in a way that I could recognize. It wasn't it wasn't moving towards something. It wasn't goal oriented. And to me, that is terrifying to consider my life that way. So at the time, I was fascinated by him, and I was very much challenged by the vision of life that he was living out, which was just to accept, accept
Yeah, just be.
what is here. Yeah, just be. And when I heard how he was staying and how he was sleeping at night, I thought, well, this might happen to me in Europe. I'm about to go and hitchhike in Europe, and who knows where I'm going to get stranded out there. But what if I were to just start it here, right in New York City, and sleep somewhere on the street? Because it's almost this sort of mental resilience that you can build, right? You put yourself through something. I think athletes do this a lot. You put yourself through a particular experience, and then you know that you have moved through that before, right? So that was a part of my mindset. But then another part was just to, again, break out of these bounds of a sense of self that I had, and try and access something outside of that and see what that does to my sense of self, right? Do I feel like I grow through that? Does the self become more expansive, or does it somehow start to fracture and break? Yeah. So that was something that I was playing with a lot. But I want to turn things back to you, because I'm so curious about your impetus to travel when you first did, because you were so much younger. And I think at that time as well, Europe probably felt a little bit further away than it does now, just because of the, lack of cell phones and things like that and internet.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I'll share a quick story, but I really want to focus on your adventures. Yeah, I was young. I always wanted to travel. And, just after school, I'm like, what am I going to do? I graduated. I want to do something. I spent my 23rd birthday, so I timed it like to be there from October to November. And I planned a trip, but like I deviated from that trip. The impetus was just like, I hear all these news stories. I hear my parents telling me stuff and at school. And the first thing I realized going and meeting people like actually on the ground, like in these countries, like, the news is beep, it's not always accurate to what your experience when you're actually there and meeting the people and seeing what their country is about and seeing what the politics are about and hearing from the people themselves. So that was a really that just like affirmed right away, like, wow, I'm so glad I did this, and that's why I really encouraged my kids to travel also when they got older, and we took them on trips. But my youngest also traveled a month in Barcelona for his one of his last sementers before COVID hit, which was such a great opportunity for him also. So yeah, my impetus was just to I was like I said, filled with wanderlust. I'm like, I just want to go. I want to experience to the world, and it was awesome. It was great. I have so many stories, but this is about about you, brother. I want to share because I want to pump up this podcast. It really is, coming from a media background, the production value on this, the music. Let's just talk about your music a little bit. And I remembered. So Johnny and I met. We actually met at a men's gathering, local yoga studio that we go to. I met you probably 2 years ago before you traveling. I think it was. I'm terrible with time, but you were playing. I remember, and I'm like, wow, this dude is talented. So let's just talk about the music a little bit because there's a lot of stories you shared also in here, which feel free to relate to them. How music, because to me. I love music. I can't live without it, and that's why Asheville's so great. Music is a universal language, and you travel to a lot of these countries. You met people, you jammed with them, you created with them, like Taz, the story about Taz. You let go of your ego. You let go of you only had three strings on your violin, but you performed something that was like really like sublime from listening to the podcast. So. Talk a little bit about those adventures and about how the music maybe has helped you, through your journeys.
Mm. Yeah, music is it's definitely more than a skill. It's more than just an activity. It is a way of relating and a way of communicating, and also a way of letting go in itself. So I think sometimes there can be a beautiful mirror between actions that we can take and states that we would like to inhabit. Right. So for me, this exists in activities like yoga, or in dance or in music, where I engage with them and they show me ways that I can be in the rest of my life. And that's so exciting. So on the trip, I went with very little expectation of the role that music would play. I didn't bring my violin with me. I didn't bring any instruments with me, but I wanted to be out there. And actually, this is a little secret because it's not until later in the series, but I ended up getting a violin.
Nice.
As I was traveling. I was in Tbilisi, Georgia, and I just arrived there the night before. I was walking along the street, and I had made a kind of pact with myself that if I came upon a violin, one that was decent and one that was cheap, I could get it and I could travel with it. Because all my violins here in Asheville, they're either like too nice and I wouldn't want to lose them, or they're not nice enough and I wouldn't want to carry them all that way with me because I don't enjoy playing them enough. So I always had my eyes out and my ears out for a violin, but this day, it's a beautiful day walking along the river in Tbilisi, Georgia, and there's this merchant just selling some wares, like used vinyls and used tapes and all kinds of old stuff. And there's a violin case. I open it up, and this violin is in horrible condition. It's just mangled. All of the strings are off. It's got broken pieces on it, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, wow, this is not good. But I take a look at the body of the instrument, and with musical instruments, it's the body that you really want to take note of. What's the shape of the body? Because that's where the resonance is. And there's probably a metaphor there, but this body was not bad. So I talked to the seller, and it's he wants like $500 or something for it, and I'm like, okay, well, I think I'll leave it for now. But I come back the next day and I show him everything that's wrong with it, and I'm just like, this thing is really a piece of crap. And then talk him down to like $250 or something. And then I buy it. And it was just that day that someone messaged me from Armenia saying, hey, I'm a violinist in Armenia, and I want to meet you when you come to Armenia. So I was about to go to Armenia the next day. And I say to him, oh, well, I just bought a violin. Can you help me? It's totally busted. So he hooks me up with the best violin maker in Armenia, and we get the thing fixed. And it was just a beautiful story of allowing all these things to work together. which you don't expect. And that violin I ended up bringing to India with me, and
Nice.
had so many experiences in India playing at weddings and playing at different events where the music really is so different. I mean,
Yeah.
we use this phrase that music is a universal language, but I don't actually believe
Hmm.
that. I think
Really?
music,
Wow. Hmm.
I think there are
Yeah.
many musical languages.
Yeah.
So I don't see like when I hear Indian music, it makes me
Yeah.
feel things,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I don't think it makes me feel the same things
Hmm.
when
Yeah.
when someone who grew up with that music hears that music.
Hmm.
So it was really fascinating to test that as I was moving in these different countries, because I would try and learn a few tunes, local tunes, right? So that I could play something that people would recognize. And it would be very interesting because I would play some movie themes, which a lot of people around the world knew. And then I would play some of these local tunes and everyone would go wild.
Hmm.
And then I would play, throw in a little bit of Bach, and which I love to play. I love to play Bach.
Nice.
But people oftentimes just did not care, right?
Hmm.
And so it's interesting. It's just another language, right? And
Yeah.
to me, that was a really big learning experience. Is that like, do I want to communicate what is meaningful to me, or
Hmm.
what is meaningful potentially to the people I'm playing for? And so even when I didn't love a song, it was worth playing because it was speaking to the people there. So that was wonderful to learn how to humble my own tastes and my own ideas about music and give to people.
Hmm. That's awesome. I think for me, like when I hear music is a universal language, I think for one thing is even if you can't speak like the same language, it's like it could soothe the savage beast. But I think more like even like, and I hear what you're saying. It's definitely like different countries, different music and all. I play guitar, but I don't consider myself like, I don't know theory. Like if my younger son is a very natural musician, so he could sit down, he's playing all these minor chords and he's trying to explain it to me. And I'm like, I say, well, my brain doesn't work that way. He's like, well, you just don't want to put the time in, which he's probably right. So I play by ear and I play, but to listen to like yourself or like professional grade musicians, to me, you could go anywhere and you could sit down and you could play, even if it's a different country and different music, you could still kind of you hear it and you could pick up rhythms and stuff. So I guess to me, that's kind of like when I say it's a universal language, I think other than the language of love, I'm just so enamored by music and here in Asheville, I'm blown away by the talent of music. I mean, New York has got a lot of good music, a lot of talent there. But I would say per capita, like where we are, go out any night of the week and the music here is just phenomenal. I mean, I'm like I just get very excited about that. So, so,
Definitely,
so I had to
definitely.
ask you about that, and it does remind me of a story. So I'll make it quick. I was in Florence, and you play guitar, right? You play multiple instruments, right? So you could be strumming and stuff. You put the pick in your mouth. I'm sure you've done that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Of
I'm in a I'm
course.
in a I'm in a music store. So I'm this big thing of picks. I take out a pick, and I'm strumming, and then I like to finger pick also. So I put it in my mouth.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even realize. I want to put in the pick in my pocket, okay? And I eventually I leave the store because I'm just in the music store to play. And next thing I know, they're calling out "Polizei!" They're yelling for the police, and I'm like, what? Oh, you thief, you thief! I'm like a two cent freaking plastic. I'll pay you for it. Polizei! They're calling for the police in Florence. I'm going to get arrested for stealing a guitar pick. So it reminded me of that story. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
We'll be right back after this. Hey guys, this is Waska. Listen, if you're hearing my voice, there are no coincidences. Are you ready to get unblocked and take the next step forward, whether it's with relationship issues, finances, or just moving into the next phase to elevate yourself? Listen, bros, this is what I do. I'm here for you. Drop me an email at Waska, that's Waska, at illuminatedwarrior.com. We will work on this together and take you to the next step. I promise you'll be glad you did. You've been to like a lot of different countries. Like, what was the total time that you actually hitchhiked and traveled around?
This last trip, when I went around the globe, it was 16 months.
16 months. Okay. Okay.
Hmm.
So there was a
Hmm.
time before that also, because I'm only aware, I guess, of. of this chunk?
Yes. Yeah, yeah. The first trip that I went on was just in the East Coast of the States in Europe, and that was 4 months. Yeah.
Gotcha, gotcha. So this is like a profession for you. I don't know if you're getting paid for it, but well,
Maybe one day.
what really hits me like the most is like I was saying before, like I think his name is Gogi, the dude who lived on, is that his name?
Goga. Hmm.
Goga, the guy who you met, that's from Georgia, not as he says, not the state,
Yeah.
country, living on a yoga mat. That like to me, it's like wow, like I don't really aspire to be like that, but again, the beingness of it, like not really like caring about like really what anybody thinks of you or just existing. Like I was just remember listening to that particular episode, and it's like wow, we're raised here in America for the most part, especially as men. You got to go out, you got to make money, you got to get stuff, you got to have a house and a car, and it's the accumulation of wealth and material objects that I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure even if your parents aren't saying that, but that's what comes in. That's what we need to do. And like it's like I know even today, after like so many like couple decades of working on myself, it's hard for me sometimes to just be like, well, I'm not being productive. I'm not producing anything. I'm not being creative. I'm just relaxing today. And I get on my own case. It's like, wow, dude. I know where it comes from, but it's like there's so much value. So when I was listening to that, I'm like, wow, yeah, like I kind of envy that in a way that I find difficult, and I know a lot of people find difficult at times. And then you were emulating that in a way also, like just having that experience. So like, how does that speak to you also? Because I see, obviously you're doing something, you're producing and being creative from this endeavor, but also a lot of the things you're doing, I feel like you really are. You're just going with the flow. You're saying yes. You're accepting, and you're being to a degree also. So there's kind of like a balance there with both. So how does that speak to you, the doing and the being and your adventure?
That is such a big question that
I know.
I've been working on for a long time, I think, in part because I am driven to do things that don't have a lot of financial uh, reward, let's say. So, I make art. That's one thing that I do, and that's my profession in a way. But oftentimes it's been just a sacrifice, a financial
Mm,
sacrifice to go that route. And then travel is even more so, where it feels sometimes like nothing is being produced, not
mm,
even something beautiful. All that is happening is that sensations are moving through my body, right? To me, this is what much of life is
yeah.
sensation moving through the body. And I've I've gone through many phases and many thoughts around this kind of value of productivity, and then just sort of the more kind of capitalistic values that we live around. And I do feel like when I am open to sensation,
Mm,
when I'm not closing myself off and forming a goal, right? A goal is a very quick way to eliminate excess sensation, right? Let's say if I'm like doing some math, right? It's a very mental kind of activity, and there's nothing about the sensation in my legs that are helping me do that math. So it's like I cut off that sensation, right? I cut off pretty much as much physical sensation as I possibly can, because I'm trying to force my
mm,
focus into a very fine point
yeah.
of doing these calculations. But for me, if I'm able to open myself to sensation, that basically equates to a rich life. If life is a series of
Yeah.
sensations, then the more we can feel and the more we can accept those feelings, the richer our life is.
Yeah.
So I think those times when and it doesn't have to be traveling, it can be anywhere, right? But those times when I've been able to really open myself to the sensations that
Mm,
are moving through in the moment,
Yeah.
those are the times when I feel rich and I feel like I am I'm spending my life,
Yeah.
in a beautiful way. It's like it's going, and that's good.
Yeah, that's I agree with that. So like I feel, which I think, I'm hearing you say the same thing to a degree, like the value is in the experience. We don't have to have like something that we could hold in our hand. Doesn't have to be material, doesn't have to be something we paid for with money necessarily, but the experience of these things that you're out there exploring, like opening your heart, like in some of the episodes also, I'm hearing the way you're describing it. It's like, wow, and you go on both sides. Like it's very easy to judge somebody. Like, wow, look at the way this guy's living. Look at the what is she talking about? Like how But you also like open your heart up to like, hey, wait a minute. I'm here to like expand and be open to these things, and that's like it's very intentional. Which I know for me, and if I don't really focus on being that open and intentional, I'm like in a pattern mode of like, well, oh, look at this, and being judgmental and being negative. So I have to actually strive, even though I know these concepts, I know these ways. I have to remind myself, hey, dude, positivity, stop criticizing and stop, because I do that. I catch myself. My partner tells me, hey, you just criticize that person. I'm like, wow, really? There's good things to focus on here. So I think that's really important to remember. And I heard a lot of that, like in your travels, you went on both sides of the fence, so to speak. You would point these things out, which most people would see, but you'd also say like, well, here's another way. We could explore this also if we just let it be, right?
Definitely. And there's so many ways of moving through life. It's that was one of the most exciting things, is just to get to see the variety, the sheer variety of choices that people can make. And most of these choices are not ones that are prioritized in the media that we consume. So they're very subtle oftentimes, and they're very mundane, but they're so interesting and intriguing. They've got an inner life to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Johnny, what would you say? Because you've had a lot of adventures, and feel free to, if you want to share any other specific ones. Like, what would you say was some of, or even the like real aha like takeaway? I'm sure there was a lot of them, but like, what did you really? How did you benefit from this adventure that you're on, and then that you're continuing? I mean, you obviously you're sharing your podcast, but like I'll say spiritually even like what came to you, what did you receive from this, would you say?
Mm. I think many of the gifts have been so subtle.
Hmm.
And that sounds maybe silly. Maybe it sounds like I'm avoiding the question, or
No.
hinting that maybe I didn't receive any gifts. But I think so many of the gifts, they were experiential, they were felt, and some of them had to do with action and with decision and with me. Some of them were about the actions and decisions that I made, and the experience of moving through particular activities and experiences that were challenging, that were difficult, like silent meditation retreats and hitchhiking up into the Himalayas,
Hmm.
and things that were pushing my comfort zone for sure. But then many of the most beautiful things that were offered were very simple.
Hmm.
And I think learning about the simplicity of a gift can be that was huge. I remember one time I was staying with a farm family. They were up in the Himalayas, and they welcomed me in, and we were all sitting in the kitchen, in front of the fire, and they were cooking. And at the end of the meal, they offered me this traditional dessert that they offered to guests, and it was called shakar ghee, and
Hmm.
it was just jaggery sugar powder, basically, and fresh ghee from their cow that they had heated
Hmm.
over the fire so that it was liquid, and they've just poured this warm hot ghee over the
Hmm.
sugar, and you mix it together, and that's it. It's so simple. It's just two things, but being offered that in that context, you know, there's
Yeah.
there's nowhere to go. There's no activity to be done after the
Yeah.
meal. All that was happening was we were just there, and it was about over, right? And then they made this gift, and something as small as that
Yeah.
uh, can be incredibly meaningful. So
Yeah.
I think for me, one of the things that I learned was kind of the transformation of meaning, right? We
Mm.
make things meaningful. We
Right.
find them meaningful in and of themselves. Who knows what anything is, right? I don't know what any of this stuff is, right? The floor that I'm sitting on, or the sky, or any of it. It all just is kind of appearance.
Yeah.
But especially when there's like intention or grace or generosity involved from another person or from me,
Yeah.
like something arises, right? That we call meaning.
Hmm.
And that's wonderful to be able to not just have it in the moment, but to take that with us.
Yeah.
Then you have it forever,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
then you can actually act on it with others, right?
So what comes to mind hearing that, you've been to a lot of different countries, you've met a lot of different people from really all walks of life. You know, this country, the U.S., is, I don't think it's going to dispute it. We're more divided now than we have been since maybe even the Civil War. People are just really very fractured and divided. And again, a lot of people haven't even been out of this country before. Again, that was my experience. My first time I traveled, it really opened up my eyes. I know it's opened up my kids who have traveled, opened up their eyes to seeing other people, other places, other ways of living and being. So, you got to meet a lot of different people. So what was your take on, and this is, obviously there's I don't want to say good and bad, but I'll use that for lack of a better descriptor. There's good and bad people everywhere. There's friendly people, there's grumpy people, whatever we want to call it. Like, what was your overall experience of like all meeting all these different people, which makes the world a little bit smaller, a little bit more intimate. How are people around the world? How were you greeted? How were you cared for?
Hmm. I was met with a lot of kindness and generosity and helpfulness. And I realized that a big part of that has to do with privilege of my race and my gender and things like that. So I understand that, and I'm working to understand that further. I also saw a lot of ways in which people seem to be both at once, both good and bad, whatever those
Duality
words
of our
mean.
lives, yes.
Yeah, where many times I would see them interacting with one person, and it seemed like there was love and generosity and kindness between those two people. They would turn around and interact with another person, and it seemed like there was animosity
Hmm.
and there's even maliciousness between those two people. So the way that we appear, right, to each other, it's constantly changing.
Hmm.
It's not at all stable. So that's why the ideas of like a good or bad person, they don't make sense to me in
Hmm.
terms of the people I met on my travels.
Yeah.
They weren't good or bad. They were so multifaceted that I couldn't figure them out.
Interesting.
And also, I got a really fascinating look into people's lives, especially as I was hitchhiking, because oftentimes people were so vulnerable and open to
Hmm.
me when I got into their cars, in a way that was really surprising. It
Yeah.
was almost like I was their therapist and they could tell me everything. People were telling me their secrets,
Wow.
that they were not telling their family, that they were not telling their friends. And that was really interesting. And a part of it had to do with a lack of connection between us.
Hmm.
We didn't have history. We didn't have, a buildup of emotional turbulence,
Yeah.
or love between us. There was really nothing. But here
Right.
we are in a car together, and
Yeah.
we're going to spend the next 2 hours together. So things come up in people, right, in those
Yeah.
situations.
That's
So I
awesome.
got to learn a little bit about like motivation. Everyone's motivations are really hard to tease apart.
Hmm.
And you never, I don't think, really know why someone does what they do. Um, so that was really like fascinating, but caused me to have to step back
Hmm.
from my assumptions
Yeah.
about why I do things, why others do things, because
Yeah.
I can't figure it out. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, that's a great insight. Well, at any given moment, I worked in television pretty much my whole professional career, and so I'd meet a lot of famous people from all walks, sports, actors, actresses, and you'd hear things about them, and I always thought like you could meet me for one day. I could be like the nicest guy in the world. Another day, I could be a real, as my father would say, a putz. You don't
Mm,
know. I remember this is
yeah.
before your time. I don't even know if you remember who Jerry Lewis is. He was part of the Rat Pack.
Mm,
Anyway, he used to do the
yeah.
Jerry Lewis telethon, and we were doing that one year in the Rainbow Room. Like, don't talk to Jerry. He's a nasty SOB. The guy was the nicest guy I ever met. Now again, this is just my experience, but it was like over a couple days, and he was like just a super really nice guy. I was doing handheld camera. He's like, oh yeah, my cameraman. So it's all like preconceived, and especially in that industry, there's always people talking about. But the point you're making is very valid. We don't know what anybody's feeling or thinking, and having that grace is that's a gift and a blessing unto itself. Yeah. So
Hmm.
before we
Hmm.
wrap up, I want to give you the opportunity, like, let's speak specifically about the podcast. If you want to just talk about like what like really motivated you to get the podcast going, and what do you want people to know about the podcast?
Mm. Yeah, go and find out is it's an immersive audio experience. And the seed of it came to me as I was traveling because I was doing so much writing. I was, writing in these journals anytime I could. And I had no idea how any of this should get out into the world or if it should. And I wasn't so interested in writing a book or writing a blog, but I've always been fascinated by audio, and being a musician, that has also been a huge part of my life. I also did a master's degree in cinema studies.
Mm.
So uh, audiovisual storytelling was something that I love to interact with. And yeah, eventually it seemed like storytelling with audio was a way to subvert the expectations we have around travel. I
Hmm.
think travel in our culture is so heavily visual. There are
Hmm.
all these Instagrammers who are travel Instagrammers
Right.
now, and it's all about getting the perfect shot of the perfect landscape, or the perfect beach or any of that. And I get very bored of all that kind of stuff. And I was thinking so many of the feelings and the stories around travel are not captured in a picture.
Hmm. True.
What if we went about finding those things through audio, through music, through sound effects,
Yeah.
through great writing, and through voices? Because the voice is really so intimate. I mean,
Yes.
as someone making this show, that the voice is a very powerful
Mhm.
instrument, and it's like you can be so direct in speaking to someone. So that's what I was attempting to do with this show, and it's been a huge opportunity to live a second adventure in making the
Hmm.
podcast, right? I lived this
Right.
adventure in going around the world, but making this thing has been an adventure in itself, because you are forced to learn and grow and go on more of an inner journey as a part of the creative process. So that's ongoing, because I am making it as I go. It's not something that I sort of just made and now I'm releasing, but every 2 weeks as I'm releasing the episodes, I'm working on the next one. So today I am working on tomorrow's episode, and it's
Nice.
exciting and it's fully embodied as an experience. So that's been a huge adventure, and I'm just so excited to share it and to hopefully get people thinking about their own lives, their own stories, and their own adventure. Because I don't want to set this up as like, this is real adventure, that I lived, and your life is not an adventure. It's more like, where are the adventures that are taking place within your life?
Yeah.
That's what I hope someone can ask of themselves as they come away with this, because so much of adventure is actually relating to other people and moving through these experiences of growth, which happen to us on a daily basis. So a huge part of it is taking those things seriously and identifying them and being willing to live out those stories.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Well, you just answered my last question, because I know you say you don't have to travel to have these experiences to be open to it. So yeah. So now I'll have to just say, is there anything left unsaid that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I guess just to go off of that, I think it's so easy to think that we need to either travel to have an adventure or do something extraordinary to be considered extraordinary. But the amazing thing is that life is happening to all of us right now.
Yeah.
And it's plenty. You don't need to do any kind of special thing or make anything special, because so much is right here. And a huge part of being alive is just being willing to participate in it, whatever that looks like for you right now. But participating in the unfolding is the real big adventure that we're all in.
Yeah, beautiful, man. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's just showing up, right? I mean, you got to show up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this has been a wonderful conversation, Johnny. I really appreciate you being on the show.
Well, thank you, Waska. It's wonderful to be here.
Yeah. So go and find out. All the links will be in the show notes, and I just want to thank you again. I really highly recommend you checking out the podcast. It's entertaining, but it's inspiring, and again, coming from a production background, very high production value. All the music, unless otherwise noted, is Johnny's, which is worth checking out just on its own. So thank you, Johnny. Beautiful conversation, and until next time,
Thank you,
let's
Waska.
continue to illuminate our lives with love and kindness.
Visit IlluminatedWarrior.com if you'd like to go deeper and find out more about what's available within the Illuminated Warrior Men's Transformational Community. Tune in next time for more candid conversations for men and women about men on the Way of the Illuminated Warrior Talk Show. Until next time, illuminate your path with loving kindness.